Hello guys, this is Dr. Anatole, and we are trying a new format, kind of new format. I have Mike on behind the camera, somewhere very far, far away in the universe. And talking of which, we want to talk about the benefits of travel to things spiritual and just to your life, and not being stuck in your little, echo chamber as a way out of ignorance, etc. So I'll let Mike introduce himself and see if you can maybe hone in on something on this subject or something.
Well, hello everybody. I am on the other side of a Zoom screen this time. I apologize. We haven't formalized our Zoom sponsorship yet, and I don't think we're actually going to get one. But we're doing this because we had so much fun talking when I was visiting Dr. Anatole in person that I thought it might be interesting to try to continue to talk more often, even if we are hundreds of miles apart. And so when we talked about echo chambers, I think one of the things that we sort of grazed over was that one of the ways people open up their minds and their hearts and their spirits maybe, one of the ways people do that is by traveling and being exposed to different cultures, or frankly, just going to a different state. Just 2 hours away to people you don't know, to where you have to make new connections in your mind, and you don't know how everything works, even if it works almost exactly as it does in your hometown. So I don't know if you want to take it from there.
Yeah, well, I will. So a couple of things. It will be a little bit disjointed because that's how I think. Basically, to me, spiritual path, well, frankly, path of life is about, let's call it progress, about mental expansion, becoming better, certainly becoming less dogmatic and more open-minded. Why would that be important? Well, because that just makes your life better. It just makes your life more joyful, more interesting. And to me, I think a big path towards so-called spirituality is the path out of dullness. And how do you get away from being dull? Well, you travel to places where people are less dull, to look at buildings that are less dull, just something more beautiful, more interesting, etc. And it may sound judgmental, but I on purpose trying to sound judgmental, but basically just, even driving to a town an hour away from you will introduce some kind of newness in your life. It can also introduce you to realization that you can be more open. One other thing I wanted to mention here is that many of you have and know that I have 2 books. The first book is Modern Seer's Vortices. It's not a plug, but in the book there are 3 phases, 3 levels of vortices, but in the higher levels there are 9 levels totally. One of the quote-unquote requirements is living in a foreign country for, I don't remember now, for 3 to 5 years. And one of the reasons why I made this fairly stringent requirement is because if you go to a place where people speak a different language, they have a different culture, and you just live there, this is going to blow your mind slowly. And it's a very easy way how to get yourself in a really good place to see your own dogmas, and just about that. And and any kind of travel is great. And I would make a gradation, a level. I live in a rather parochial little town here where people are, let's be honest, they're kind of closed-minded and provincial, and they don't travel a lot. When I came here to work as a professor, one of the things I've been told that people here freak out to just drive to Buffalo, which is a place with 1 million people, but it's still really small, and people think in a quite provincial way in Buffalo. And it's, I've had so many conversations. They're so funny. It's like, I remember I said to one student that food here is well, bland, to say the least, and he thought that that was one of the most provocative statements. And that's same student, another student, I remember, he decided to move to the Bay Area, San Francisco, the Bay Area. And I started getting texts and emails from him. It's like, oh my God, there's so many interesting things in the Bay Area. It's like, he thought that he's actually from Rochester, so he thought that moving to Buffalo, it was like moving to a metropolis, and or maybe he's from Syracuse, I don't remember actually. And then when he moved to the Bay Area, he saw one of the most splendid, amazing places in the United States. There's just so many things going on there. In a kind of weird way, it's similar to New York, but I don't want to be more judgmental than I already just been. And and it's just there are places where it's like, wow, it's like I have friends who live in Manila, and they think that the Philippines is like, wow. It's actually, I really love the Philippines. People there are probably the most amazing people in the world, certainly one of the top 5. And that those friends of mine visited Bangkok, and in Bangkok, it's like, first of all, Bangkok is an imperial capital of Thai people, of Thailand, and it's just you just go to any shopping center there, not any, but if you go like the central ones, it will blow you out of blow your mind completely. It's like just walking in some of those big multi-story shopping centers is amazing. Well, we got a phone call. So all I was trying to say is that if you compare where you live to a place which is frankly better or just different or interesting, well, it's going to expand your mind. I'll give you another example, which is for me a good example. If you watch these videos from India, you will see a lot of garbage on the streets, poor people, etc. But if you go there, you will discover that this is one of the most amazing cultures in the world, and it's all under the surface. How wonderful people are, how open, kind they are, how helpful they are, how much hospitality is there, how much they invite you to their houses, to their homes. It's an artifact of what probably used to be the most spiritual places, arguably one of them. And it certainly blows your mind. And I tell to people all the time, it's like when you land to India, you say, where did I just get myself to? This is horrible. How can I even stand it? And then when you leave, you want to cry because you want to come back to India just 10 minutes after you flew out. It's, well, maybe not 10 minutes, but it's just the effect these places have on you is amazing. And the most important thing about travel is you don't have to do anything. It's not something that you need to make a big effort about. You just buy an airplane ticket, you go there, stick yourself in a hotel, hopefully not 5-star hotel, because if you do that, you will just basically move from one first world place to another first world place. You want to go where locals go. I mean, you don't have to be extreme and and move under a bridge, but if you communicate with the locals in any kind of forum, it's going to definitely expand your mind.
I'd like to stick a pin in that, by the way.
Sure.
In terms of stars, but we can come back to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, go ahead. I'm done. I think I made my point. Well, at least up to this point, I made my point.
Well, so we can talk about a couple different things here, and you can choose the order in which you want to do that. Which is, there's certainly a benefit to going to a big city. You'll find big cities to be more liberal because people are living on top of each other and can't just ignore each other. So it turns into very vibrant environments one way or the other. Sometimes it turns into some conflict, in fairness, but in the end, if a city survives, It turns into a very vibrant area. We can also talk about how a five-star hotel in New York is not the same thing as a five-star hotel in Mexico or India or Asia or Europe. Those are at least two options of what to talk about to go next.
Well, I'm going to respond, and we should probably, well, we can do it in this video too. The only and the most important thing about travel is that it puts you in a situation that is going to be out of your box, beyond your comfort zone to some extent. And I think every person needs to choose how far they want to go. For some people, going to an exotic place like India for the first time may be too much. For other person, going to Buffalo, New York, rather than coming to my little town, could be too much. The most important thing here is that there is this movement forward, this desire to expand the mind. And I'm going to throw one thing here that I haven't completely thought through, but I'm beginning to believe that spirituality cannot be conservative. I do not believe, I don't think that, I think that what makes a person spiritual is being open-minded to new things, which is the definition of being liberal. Conservative people tend to be religious, and they have their own their own place. And I think that a conservative person can also expand his or her mind, but there is a friction there. There is an unwillingness there to do that, and I think that being progressively more open-minded is a very good path towards creativity. And since creativity, well, open minds, creativity, new inputs, new stimuli, and creativity is pretty much the only ticket towards spirituality. It's not about repeating mantras. It's not about doing this or that or prayer. It's about becoming creative, not getting stuck in it with your ego, and moving forward towards more creative, spiritual, intuitive things, more close to your heart and soul, like that.
Okay, but let's talk about something a little more practical for people who might be watching and don't, necessarily travel a lot, which is, a three-star hotel in one place and a three-star hotel in another place are very different things, right?
Well, sure. I mean, you can go from this point of view. I mean, you can, like, for example, for a person from, I don't know, from Erie, Pennsylvania, which I happen to like a lot, they can make a 4-hour drive to Toronto, no, to just to go to Niagara Falls. I mean, they can go, it takes 2-3 hours, and get themselves into that Hilton or whatever. I don't remember the name of that hotel that faces, like, I think there are several that face the falls.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be a very nice weekend trip. And by itself, not staying in some dinky motel, staying in a nice, nice hotel, which there are several there, and you can get them cheap. I know you can do it. I mean, I'm not worried about the price that much, but I'm just saying that it's not something beyond the reach, even someone who makes minimum wage, with a little bit of planning, that will certainly expand your mind. And you don't have to go very far. It's all about gradations. I know no one is saying that you need to jump from the first floor to the 100th floor. You will probably, fall from, trying to fly that high up. So, and no one is saying that you should first do this and then do that, and then you expand yourself to flying to, I don't know, Australia or something. You can do that, but, whatever, there's no particular, what's the word for it, just do something new. And if we're talking about travel, I'll do something new with travel. And yes, I mean, if you go to a 5-star hotel in India to, I think I've been once, not even stayed in one. Well, you'll have, different kind of breakfast. You will have different kind of whatever service. People will have funny accents. I actually did stay in a 5-star hotel in Bangkok. And their breakfast was an experience. I mean, I had breakfast there and lunch at the same time. They had all kind of interesting fruits, and they had all kind of interesting vegetables and rices and ice cream, and so this by itself can be a trip. When you were here, we went to different kind of restaurants. Well, that probably for us is not terribly mind expanding, but for someone who have not been to a Thai restaurant or who have not been to an Indian restaurant or something like that, that by itself could be a very cheap way of doing it. Going back to my, favorite local town, Erie, PA, there are so many ethnic restaurants there. You can go there, and that would be just, a dinner trip or a lunch trip, or if you eat something wrong, it could be a multi-hour trip to the loo. How do they say it in American English? To the toilet. It
Well,
could be very interesting.
well, yeah, but I mean, challenging yourself does sometimes end up with a trip to the loo, if you will, in many different ways, and not just in food.
Mm,
And part of that is getting the part of yourself out that is stuck.
exactly. I mean, that's I mean, I think that to use the word stuck is probably going very, very far for me. But we're all stuck in some way or another, or let's say we're moving. There are many degrees from fresh water stream, which I have right there out of the window. You can, well, I can kind of see it, to trying to swim in molasses. Uh, so yeah, absolutely. The most important thing for me is that, I mean, I see a lot of people, particularly in this area, who just haven't been around, and the place they get their information from makes me feel sorry for them, frankly, and for
Yeah,
some people, very sorry. You know, and all of that is fixable, and they don't need to follow what I have done, and they don't need to follow what some people who are quote unquote better than me have done. Travel to, like, there's this one kid, remember that, what's his name, on YouTube, who decided to travel to every country in the world.
right.
I think that's, well, to me it's nuts. I wouldn't, there are several countries I would never travel to, for the reason that I just don't have any interest. Would they expand my mind? Probably. Would they deposit a bullet in my body? Possibly. Do I want that kind of expansion? Not really.
Right.
So I'm really talking about going to places which are safe.
Well, that's a
And
great transition to the next thing I was going to bring up, which is the elephant in the room at the moment in terms of travel and the travel industry, which is that with the pandemic, travel is not necessarily what I would say is recommended. Someone watching this 2 years later, maybe travel is not restricted anymore and it won't bother them. But let's just say you have people that are watching this now and you're telling them or you're suggesting that travel could be a good way to get out of your own skin. Well, how do I do it safely in a pandemic time?
well, I mean, this is really a question to your doctors, but I would say, first of all, it is extremely unlikely that this period is going to last forever, and they already are working on the vaccines. Whatever your opinion, I don't want to go into this. Well, your opinion, I know, Mike's. It's it will pass. One way or another, it will pass. Possibly we'll have an age restriction on travel. Well, expanding your mind is age independent, but at 20, you should expand your mind as much as you can, because by the time you get to 60, 70 or whatever, you will probably be more expanding your stomach than anything else, or maybe not. So, well, I mean, you need to be safe. So, I mean, in the US, you can just hop in your car and go somewhere, get a mask, and if you need to eat, in some restaurant, well, just check out to see how many people are in there. Maybe just go to a supermarket and buy yourself some, I don't know, whatever salad. You don't have to eat out. I mean, in the US, well, I mean, the only thing I can imagine here that would be a problem is if you schmooze with a lot of people. Well, don't. Just go and look at buildings and talk to people at a safe distance. Regarding foreign travel, well, as far as I know, say, for example, Dominican Republic is open. I know that Mexico is open pretty much, unless you have to fly in, not drive in, etc. And the borders are opening up. I know that people from Russia can travel to Zanzibar, which is part of Tanzania, without any restrictions. I know that Turkey is open. So it depends on where you live and what your government thinks is okay, and you should definitely follow those guidelines, because, well, just that's the way to be safe. I mean, I know one YouTube blogger who I really like, or rather I used to like. He couldn't stand being in Moscow, and he just purchased several tickets. He flew to a third country that was open to the Russians, and from that country he flew to another country which was open only to that country, and this way he had no problem. I also know that from a lot of sources that the airports are kind of open. They are not really checking whether you are allowed to go somewhere or not. Um, don't take my advice on this at all. This is something you need to research on your own. But I really want to keep this talk to the subject that it expands your mind to travel. I mean, you can also just do something like watching, videos from another country, on YouTube. I mean, that's how I've spent last few months watching 600 plus videos of this one guy who, well, right now he lives in India because of the pandemic, but he travels back and forth. He spends like 6 months in India and 6 months somewhere in Far East Russia, and I like him a lot. And I'm envious about him. But why I'm bringing this up is that watching his videos, I realized it became clear to me what places in India would like to visit, and what other places I wouldn't visit that much. Not because they're bad or good or whatever. It's just I know a lot about India, and watching those videos of his, I can nicely imagine how I would behave, or how my mind and body would behave in those areas.
Well, you just got exactly where I wanted you to go, which is that even if you can't travel because of restrictions, you can still travel with your mind and your heart. You can look for these places through YouTube or other video sharing services. You can get books delivered to you, and you can read about them. You can start planning different places to travel instead of just dropping yourself somewhere. Eventually, you can have an idea of what you'd like to do when you get there. These are all things you can do as an alternative to just traveling now.
I would say not even as alternatives. I think that right now this is a spectacular way to prepare yourself to travel to some place.
There you go.
I was just watching this one British kid. I don't remember what his channel is. He's obsessed with America and obsessed with American style of sports. And I just watched a couple of videos of his, so he watches what you should not do in the United States, and he gets surprised. Actually, uh, I have to shake my mind to remember. It was something interesting. His reaction was, I don't remember about I think, yeah, I think about the distances in the United States. You know, um, it's very easy from a place like England to imagine. So in England, you can drive from one side of England to another in a few hours. And here some people say, oh, I'm going to come to America and I'm going to visit New York, and then I'm going to visit Miami, and then I'm going to visit Las Vegas, and I'm going to visit San Francisco or LA in 2 weeks. And well, people don't understand that it takes like 24 hours of driving, basically 3 days of driving to drive from New York to Miami. And you will have no time to stop anywhere because you will be basically driving, and driving from New York to San Francisco, which I've done several times when I was a kid, is like 5, 6, 7. It's basically like a week's worth of driving if you're not too relaxed. If you're relaxed, it will be like probably 2 weeks of driving. So this is a big country. It's the same thing applies to Russia. It's like, if you go to Russia and if you think that you're going to drive from Moscow to Vladivostok, which is the Far East, that is twice the size of the United States. So it's like 6 or 7 or 8 time zones. They have been fiddling with time zones. I don't remember how many. It's a lot of time zones. It's a major time change, and driving this kind of distance is nuts. So yeah, I mean, you can get, because of YouTube and whatnot, you can get much better idea about what to expect purely from logistical point of view.
Right.
And you should take opportunity of that. I mean, if you've traveled within the United States, if you go to a supermarket, you'll probably find basically the same brands everywhere. So you will know which yogurt to buy and whatever, what salad to eat and not to eat. But if you are if you fly to another country, like in the Philippines or in Thailand, even when you go to a supermarket, you will not recognize many brands, or they will taste different, or they will have different names or whatever. And watching these videos, and it will give you some idea, um, you know, what to expect. And that, by the way, as far as mind expansion, you will get it. Whatever you do with videos, by the time you're going to get somewhere physically, and there's a huge difference between going somewhere physically and watching a video about it. But you will miss major pitfalls. I mean, I'll give you an example that I tell to people who like go to India. It's like, if you go to India, in the airport there will be dozens of taxi drivers who will try to woo you to their taxi, when actually there's a government stall where you prepay for the taxi, and they record the license plate of the taxi, and if something happens, well, they know who to search for and create problems for. You can also use an Uber from the airport, and again, this is one of those safer things to do. And if you're one of those spaced out Americans, and when you go to India for the first time, believe me, even if you're most spaced out, etc., the culture shock will be such that you will look pretty much that way. So this kind of stuff that saves you from shocks that would be that could ruin your trip, let's say.
Sure.
You know, you shouldn't do what my father did. It's like, they told him, when you go to India, one thing you don't do is you don't eat food that's given to you through the window of trains. In other words, you can eat food on the train, no problem.
Right.
But if someone gives you food from, I don't know, from someone you don't know what the source of it is, well, don't. And it may, to him, this whatever he ate looked perfect. Well, he spent the next 10 days enjoying. What did he enjoy? Um, being sick, yes. Having fun, and in the toilet. Yes, it was, had a good time. So otherwise, I mean, India is a perfectly safe place and there's no problem there whatsoever with the food. Well, if you're not an idiot, and the way you transform yourself from an ignorant idiot is by preparing for the trip and learning how to trust God. And in some places, learning, trusting God will be very helpful.
You know, I'm just waiting until I'm an ignorant genius, but we can save that for another video.
Sounds good. Let's stop here. I think we have half an hour, which is already probably too long for many people. You all have very good fun, and I'm going to stop recording. Maybe Mike should say something as far as goodbye, if you want.
Well, let us know if you like this, because if you did, we'll do more of it.
Sounds fantastic. It's my, how do they say, your word is my command.